guys, I'm here with Paul Abbott. Paul is a mentor here at the Wolfram Summer School, and he has a lot of experience with the program, and he kindly agreed to have this quick conversation about it. So thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Rex, for the invitation.
Well, thank you for your time and kind accepting our invitation to be here. But please tell me a little bit about your background, a little bit how you bumped into Wolfram, and why you're here today.
Okay, it's a long story. I started my PhD in 1982. 2 years before that, 1980, was the first time I'd seen symbolic computation. It was a reduced program, and one of my fellow students introduced me to it, and I thought, this is really interesting, I'd like to know more about this. Didn't do anything for the next year, finished in Australia what we call the honours level, our fourth year undergraduate, and then I commenced PhD studies. What became clear in my PhD in physics was that for the type of project I was doing, I needed symbolic computation. And the options at that time, the most famous one was a program called Maxima, and Reduce was another one that was used a lot by physicists. I had a good friend and colleague who was also doing his PhD, a guy called Kevin Kaisak, who also ended up working for Wolfram Research, that went out and did a search of all the different programs. And he found that there was this new program called SMP, which stood for Symbolic Manipulation Program. And he managed to convince our supervisor and our school of physics at my university of Western Australia, to buy a copy of this software. But to run it, we needed to buy a Microvax computer as well. So it was $20,000 for the computer, I think $2,000 for the software. That program was written by Stephen Wolfram and colleagues at Caltech. And we started using it, and we really liked it. We wrote packages for it. And we submitted some of those packages back to the company that was selling the software. It was a company called Inference Corporation, based in Los Angeles. And Stephen heard about these Australians who were using his software. Fast forward until 1986 or 7, again, my colleague Kevin heard that Stephen had another project, and that new project was to develop what became Mathematica.
Wow. So what year was that?
That was, I think we heard about it in 1987, but Stephen started his company, Wolfram Research, in 1986. So we knew that something was happening, but back then there was no internet. You just couldn't search up, you couldn't follow what was happening. We had email accounts, but at that time there was about 10 people that you knew also had email accounts. It was freaky. You basically had to write standard letters to communicate with people, go to libraries to research books and so on. Anyway, Kevin again found that at the start of 1989, Stephen was going to be demonstrating his software at Macworld, which was going to be held in Sydney. And Kevin reached out to Stephen's secretary and said, "We've heard Stephen's coming to Australia. He's going to be going to Sydney, but would he be interested to do a visit to Perth and give a talk?" And after some negotiation, this was arranged. So I think it was January of 1989, Stephen Wolfram came to Perth and gave a talk, about 100 people in the audience seeing him demonstrate the software. At the same time, Stephen met with both Kevin and myself. We had lunch together, and by the end of lunch, he basically said, "Would you like to come and work for my company?"
Really?
And we both said yes. So it took a while to organise visas and so on, but 6 months later, both Kevin and myself were working for Wolfram Research in Champaign, Illinois. So that's sort of the backstory about how I met Stephen, knew about his software, and got to work for the company.
Wow. So you were using Mathematica since which version?
Well, he sent us a tape of the 0.9 beta version for Sun. So my first experience was before it was released on the Sun computer, and then we received the Macintosh version. But at that time, there were no computers with enough memory we had access to that could actually run Mathematica on the Macintosh.
Oh, I see. So the Mathematica didn't run on the Macintosh?
It did, but you needed to upgrade. Back then, it was 4 megabytes of RAM, I think, is what you needed. And the top of the line Mac came with one, but you could put in extra if you paid a lot of extra money. You could buy extra chips to do this. So we were using it on the Sun for the next 6 months.
I know a story that later on in his life, after Steve Jobs left Apple, Mathematica was used in the next computers, right?
That's correct. And one person that I got to meet shortly after arriving at the company is also a co-founder of Wolfram Research, and his name is Teo Gray. Teo simultaneously developed the notebook front end, both on the Mac and the next computer.
Wow.
And Steve Jobs demonstrated, and in fact had Teo demonstrate Mathematica at different events, originally for the next computer and then later for the Mac.
That's amazing. So when you came to the United States, the Mac was already launched?
Yes, and I'm just trying to remember, well, I mean, Macworld was one of the big events that Wolfram went to, but simultaneously, the advantage for the next computer was that on the Next, it was bundled with every Next. So if you bought a Next Cube, one of those lovely black cubes that they used to make, and I wish I bought one of them and had one of them, they're fantastic. But you would get Mathematica as well.
Wow.
And it was essentially identical on the Next as it was on the Mac.
I see. So how was that time? I mean, people usually refer to this time as a golden times for computing.
It was exciting to do this. I mean, I remember one of my roles when I started the company was essentially, I was in technical marketing and technical sales, but what I was known as was evangelist. And that was sort of the position, which is you would go out and talk to people and convince them that this is what they should be using. So we demonstrated on the next computer at Sabit in Germany. It's this ultra-large conference exhibition that they have there every year in Hanover, where I think they have 13 halls, exhibition halls with computing, and one of those there was Next Computers. And I also went to a Paris Macworld, I think on that same trip, where I was demonstrating on the Macintosh. So, and I was at another event which is in SIGGRAPH in Boston, which is I think the first time I came to Boston, and we were demonstrating, in our booth we had both the Next Computer and Macintosh, and we were demonstrating on both of those.
That's amazing. So after you moved to the United States, what happened?
Okay, so the company is based, and still is, headquarters are in Champaign, Illinois. So I lived in Champaign, Illinois for a year and a half. What our job involved was about 2 weeks out of every 4 we had to travel. We would go to a conference, a trade show, or a university to give a talk. And at first, this is great fun. You're excited, you're loving this, and you're traveling. But then after about a year and a half, you're getting pretty tired. Every 2 weeks of traveling, you're staying in hotels and so on. But I was always excited about talking to people about it. Some of those events were fantastic, and some of those events were in small country towns, and there wasn't much interest. So it ranged from the state-of-the-art conferences down to a small sort of community event where there might be 10 people interested. So,
I see. I know you are today a professor, right?
I was for 25 years on the faculty at the University of Western Australia in what was at that time School of Physics. I took a retirement packet from there because I was doing too much admin and not enough research. But I now hold an adjunct associate professor position with my university, which is very useful.
So eventually you came back to Australia.
Eventually I came, so slightly long story. After a year and a half in America, at that time Wolfram also had a UK office based not in London but outside Oxford, and they needed, for various reasons, somebody to run that office. And I had, through birth and my family, I had British citizenship as well as Australian, so I could work there without any restriction. So, and I'd also indicated my desire to not stay in Champaign, Illinois, and at that time, because workers couldn't really work remotely in the US, if I'd been in Chicago or New York or San Francisco, I might have stayed longer. But Champaign is a nice place, but it gets too cold in the winter. And so I was I was looking at other options. Plus, at that time, my girlfriend, who was Australian, who could not get work permissions in the US, but she had access to work in the UK. So it was double reason that if I moved there, she could be there and we'd meet up again. So that worked out well. We ended up getting married later and had children now. But that was the story. We couldn't do that together in the US. So I spent a year in the UK office doing somewhat similar things to what I was doing in the US.
But always linked with the company Wolfram.
Yes, it was another year with the company, and that was, at that time, it was Wolfram Research UK. Now it's Wolfram Research Europe Limited, which Common Wolfram is running.
And did you first participate in the first summer school?
I did, though at that time it wasn't called the summer school, it was the NKS conference held also here in Wolfram, Massachusetts, and I did come to the first one.
Wow.
But that was a 3-day, it was much more like a standard conference. I don't know the full timeline when it evolved into this 3-week school, but I have now been involved with the school since 2017, so pretty much continuously since then.
That's amazing because you have been together with the company and following the development of the company till now. So
yeah, because I think, look, I started programming in Fortran and C, and I was competent there, but it was just what you wrote in those languages because you wanted to compute something. But when I started to learn Mathematica, I go, I'm more interested in understanding rather than programming. And so it has been the language that I've used. I used it in my teaching, I used it in my research for that reason. Now, it's not the language for everybody, but it is the tool that what I found for my students is many of them weren't going to learn multiple languages. So if you're only going to teach one language, this is the best language to teach. On the other hand, I believe people, just as, unfortunately, I only speak English, I understand a little bit of French and German, but in computer languages, the more languages you speak, the better you are as a programmer. So I've learned a number of different languages, procedural programming, functional programming, and so on. But the Wolfram language to me is the closest to the way that I think, and I can answer questions the most quickly in that environment. So, and for teaching, I think it is the simplest tool to introduce to students. So I've been involved with that in my teaching since about 1994. So that's about 31 years that I have used it in that role because it just works. It's great for teaching.
It works, it's simple, it's compact, and it's user-friendly, so to say. I think that's for me, Wolfram language is like the one that it's more easy for me to learn instead of other ones like Python or something like this.
I find that's a very individual thing. Some people learn different languages, some people learn multiple languages. My colleague Kevin was brilliant at this. He could program in just about any language. But what he picked up, and what I didn't understand and appreciate at first, is that functional programming is much more powerful to more quickly solve problems. It might not be ultra efficient, but it is, in many cases, when a scientist wants to get the answer to a question, they're not running it 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. They don't need it to be super fast, but they do need to know the answer. So I think different programming styles suit different people better, but the Wolfram language, as it is now called, is the most generic of those languages, and functional programming, once you get it, changes the way you think about solving problems.
And do you still program for fun in your spare time?
Absolutely. I think one group I'm involved with is a mathematical Olympiads group, because I've been learning, number theory and things like that, which were not taught as part of my
How does that
undergraduate.
work?
Okay. The Olympiads one, there are many high school and sometimes undergraduate problems. What I find interesting is how easy is it to code them in language. And one essential point I would make, Python has become the dominant environment for, it is the highest list of all programming languages. But for the type of problems I'm interested in, the one thing, especially that Wolfram language is superior, is it understands symbolic computation natively. It's part of the core design of that. And I am often not just interested in a string answer or a numeric answer. I'm interested in doing algebra, doing calculus. And that is where the Wolfram language is infinitely superior to any of those other tools that are very, very popular. Now, many people maybe don't need those tools. I think they should use them, but they don't need them. But for maths, physics, and engineering, economics, we all need those tools, and so it is the best environment for those people.
So have you been involved to Wolfram Summer School like since the first one, which was the KS conference?
No, as I said, I came to the first one, then NKS I'm interested in, but it wasn't my primary focus, plus I was a full-time academic then, and so it was hard to get time off. After I finished my faculty position at the University of Western Australia, I had more time on my hands, and I heard about the summer school, and then I noticed, in fact, the first thing I heard about was the summer camp, which is for the high school students. And so I sent in an email to a person I knew at the company, and I said, that sounds interesting, I'd like to be involved. And they said, well, we've got enough people for the summer camp. However, I think there might be a spot for you at the Wolfram Summer School. Would you like to come? Yes, I think that would be fun. So I came to a summer school in 2017, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And so how was this first experience?
Similar to the experience that you're going through right now, that is, it's a very intense 3-week program. First week heavy on lectures, but in the background you're working on a project. So the model of the summer school has basically stayed the same. And I was both a mentor and a lecturer at that early school. And for the next, so 2017, 2018, 2019, I came to the school. I think due to COVID, 2020, 21 were virtual. 2022 was actually held in Champaign, Illinois, and it was very at the headquarters of Wolfram Research. It was fun, very much fun to go back there and experience that. And then the last, so 23, 24, and this year have all been held back in Wolfram. So I've been involved in all of those. In that interim period, we've also had a high school camp in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. I've had French high school students come over and do essentially a high school camp.
There was a summer school in Italy, right?
Yes, which I didn't experience, but the other one was another virtual school in India that I was
Oh, I
involved
see.
with. So I have many other ones where essentially running the same model in different countries. It's been fun.
And for you, it's like, I know it's that like a cliche question, but is it always the same for you?
No, because the students are different each time, and plus what I have found is many of the contacts I've made through those students I still have today. Another thing is when I see people who are very, very good at their job and very good as students, fortunately, many of them have now become Wolfram staff. So Mads Barani, John McNally are two that I can think of in particular that came to the summer school as students. It changed their life, their way of thinking about what they wanted to do in their lives, and they now work for the company. So, you know, I helped that along the way, but you know, they discovered it from themselves from the school. But each year it is different because the students are different, the lecturers are different, and each year we tinker and play with the program a bit to see what worked, what didn't work, and how should we change it.
And what's next for you in terms of Wolfram experience?
Okay, good question. I work remotely as a consultant to them on a part-time basis. One of the projects I'm working on is an electronic book and also a MOOC on computational physics. At my university for 25 years, I taught computational physics. Now, many physicists would regard what I taught as not computational physics. They would say, it doesn't emphasise numeric computation. How can we call it? I said, no, I emphasise symbolic computation. And that was the difference in my focus. And indeed, every physicist who wants to write numerical codes ends up having to do a lot of pre-processing and a lot of coding in a numerical language has to involve symbolic methods before they get to there. I'm much more interested in what is called hybrid symbolic numeric computation, where you use a symbolic system to reduce the problem as much as possible before you start doing the numerics. And there are many great numerical programs, but they focus only on the numerical side of the calculation. I'm more interested in the symbolic side.
Well, it's very interesting to hear you say, because it seems that you're really passionate about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if I was to define my career, it was an interest in my PhD thesis, it was an interest in symbolic computation applied to physical problems. My thesis was on few body atomic and molecular systems, but solving them exactly, not approximately, not just numerically. And that required series expansions. And there's a famous expansion called the Fock expansion, which allows you to series, not a standard Taylor series, but a series approximation for such systems. But the analytical or symbolic computation of that is very, very complicated. You could do the first few bits by hand, but then you need a computer to do it. And that was part of my PhD, the realization we know what we need to do. We have a path to the computation. If we were brilliant at writing things out by hand, we could do this, but we will make mistakes.
Yeah.
And the computer program correctly or not. And that was my passion, my discovery, my realization. Other people have realized this too, but it changed my way of thinking about it. And I have therefore applied that same logic to everything that I've done since. So that's my way of thinking about a problem, whether it's in statistical physics, thermodynamics, quantum mechanics, it's the same approach.
It's amazing, Paul. Thank you very much for this conversation. It's so kind of you to spare your time here. We have been talking the last few weeks about having this conversation, and it's pretty nice. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and I hope that anybody listening to this applies to come to a summer school in the future.
Exactly. Before we finish, do you have, because you faced different challenges in terms of computing technologies back then. We're now in the era of AI, neural networks, LLMs, and so on. Do you have a message that you would like to spread to the younger generations?
Okay. Firstly, I think, I believe that AI is going to change the world of all of the young people. That anybody who is wanting to go on this pathway into research and into teaching, you need to be aware of the impact of AI. But I will say this, that LLMs are good at language. They are terrible at mathematics, and they are always going to be terrible at mathematics. And so what you'll see is a bunch of scientists who decry generative AI. They say this is a dead end, a pathway that will fail because of that problem. My view is different. My view is LLMs are good at language. Mathematical Wolfram language is really good at computation, and you put the two together, a bit like a human has eyes, a nose, mouth, ears, right, and touch. We have senses, and each of them gives us a different piece of information. So an LLM can speak, it's good at language, but it doesn't do the rest of the things, right? But then you can couple it to the vision system, you can couple it to an audio system, you can couple it to computation, and then you start to approach intelligence. And I think that is happening now, and it will continue to happen, and that's the future of every young person now. That's the world you need to be in, and the better you embrace that world and absorb that and adapt to it, the better you will do in whatever planned career you have.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story here, and thanks for this amazing talk.
Well, thank you very much, Lucas, for your
And
attention.
thank you.